Welcome to Deschutes Public Library's online programming. I'm Liz Goodrich, part of the community relations team that has been busy at work since the March 13th shutdown to put all of our programming up online, making available amazing content in a virtual platform. So since March 13th, we have put more than 300 videos up on our YouTube channel. And whether you found your way to this program via our web calendar or our YouTube channel, we're glad that you're here. Know that we miss being with you in person and look forward to that soon, someday. But in the meantime, do avail yourself of all the amazing content that we've produced. Everything from musical presentations to history presentations to DIY cooking classes, story times, just a huge variety. There is truly something for everyone. And we are, of course, always interested in feedback. A link to an online survey is on our web calendar entry for this program and also in the description on the YouTube video. So thank you for being here. You see before you a group of amazing people, all lovers of the written word, fans of Deschutes Public Library, and fierce advocates for a novel idea, Deschutes Public Library's community-wide reading program. Arguably the largest and most successful in the state. I can say that. We're going to talk about the origins, the history, the prospects, and the future of a novel idea. But before we get started, just a quick introduction. I'd like to introduce Chantal Strobel. She is Deschutes Public Library's Communications and Development Manager. She has overseen a novel idea since 2014, its very first year. I'd also like to introduce Stacey Donohue. She teaches in the Humanities Department up at COCC and has been a part of the team since the beginning as well. Malkin serves on our district board and our foundation board and has been a huge supporter of novel ideas since that very first page turning. And of course, I'd like to introduce Robert Currie, who was a longtime novel idea community participant and has in the last couple of years joined the ranks of our selection committee. So each person on the screen today brings a really different perspective to a novel idea, and we'll go ahead and get started. So if everybody wants to mute themselves, we'll go ahead and start with Chantal, who's going to talk about the origins of the project.
Okay, thank you, Liz. I think, Liz, did you say 2014 it started? Maybe it started.
No, well, if I did, I meant 2004.
2004. Okay, good. So in about 2002, the library had started adult programs for enrichment for all of our communities throughout Deschutes County, and they were going really well. But something that we felt was missing is how could we pull in all of our communities together to join into one celebration of reading and discussion to understand one another a little bit better. And we had looked at an example of a wonderful new concept that a woman named Nancy Pearl at the Seattle Public Library had launched. And I went up to Seattle and I sat down with Nancy and I said, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And we want to do it too in Deschutes County. And only some pretty major libraries had done it, like Chicago Public and Seattle and a few others, but there weren't any smaller libraries in smaller counties who had yet tackled it. So she was really helpful. And I went back to my director and I said, we can do this and we'll make it the best on the West Coast. And we did, thanks to all of you who have been our solid readers. We are definitely, as Liz said, one of the largest on the West Coast in terms of our participation. And we also were able, because of our early success with the novel idea, we were actually able to help launch other community reads around Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and California. So what we would do is lend our books and our program ideas out to other libraries for free so that then they could do the program we had done and get their communities interested in a community read effort. So that was a wonderful addition to our early beginnings. And I wanted to say that the one major reason that we were so successful and are still successful aside from all of you amazing readers and supporters, is because we hired Liz Goodrich to help lead and direct the programming for A Novel Idea. And she has done an amazing job for 18 years. So thank you, Liz, for all your work.
Thanks. And it has truly been a joy to watch this program grow. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history. That first year, after we decided this was going to be something the library was going to do, we gathered a team of readers and lovers of literature in our community and started asking the question, if we had to pick one book that we wanted everybody in Deschutes County to read and then come together to talk about, what would that be? And it was that first year, those of you who are on this call remember what a daunting question that was. I mean, we all have our favorite genres, we all have our favorite authors, but what we were really looking to do is pick a book that was accessible to a wide variety of readers, that was available in a variety of formats, that was a well-written book with a lot of programming possibilities, and that the author was going to be available to come speak. So those criteria that we set forth that first year are really still intact today, and they are critical in making sure every year is a unique experience. I will say that I think the most important criteria is that the author be available, excuse me, to come and talk to Deschutes County readers. It really gets our community readers invested in an author's career. I think about Amor Tolls, or I think about Eowyn Ivey, or Khaled Hosseini, those writers that we picked throughout the years that have continued to write, and we are very focused on their career. They almost feel like family. So I think that is one of the most important criteria. So that first year we had about 7 programs and about 400 participants. The programs, book discussions, art programs, we always just open the floodgates to creativity and just go for it, whatever program sounds good. Last year, our numbers were just over 9,000. So that's exceptional growth. And even though last year, because of COVID, we had to pivot all of our programming online, we didn't have as many programs, but we had this huge number of people participating virtually. So I just don't see any reason for the growth of A Novel Idea to stop. And Chantal, thank you for reminding me. I totally forgot about sharing books and resources with other libraries those early years. I'd totally forgotten about that. So thank you. Anyway, the program just continues to develop and grow. We've got an exciting growth opportunity this year that we will be sharing with you at the Unveiled event the first weekend of December. And now I'm just going to pivot a little bit to talk about how books are chosen, because that process has changed over the years. Those first 10 years or so, books were selected primarily by library staff. We always had some community participation, but it was largely driven by a pretty small group of people. 3 years ago, we decided to welcome a larger number of community participants in the selection process. So we divided the process into a 2-step situation where 20 community readers would nominate up to 3 books apiece. We start that committee meeting the first of the year. We start reading in January for what's going to happen the following spring. Once everybody has selected their 3 books around the 1st of May, we then convene an advisory committee. And that advisory committee is responsible for evaluating reading about 60 books with the goal of putting before Todd, our director, top 3 choices. And at that point, Todd makes the final decision. What this has done, it's been really a great shift in how we choose books. We are getting more community participation. As a smaller team, we're not as widely read as when we could bring together more community readers. And really, it gives the advisory committee a better list of books to pick from because of the variety of readers on that larger committee. So it's been a great way to hear from community about what they want to read. It's also been a great way to uh, create ambassadors for the project. So everybody who's on that community reading team and the advisory team, are advocates for the project within their book groups, within their communities, within their friends. So it's been a real benefit, and I'm so glad that we made that shift. It's been an important part of watching a novel idea grow. So I think that covers the history, everything I wanted to say. So I'm going to ask Stacey, who's got a real interesting perspective about novel idea as a reading project compared to other reading projects around. So Stacey.
Well, thank you, Liz. A couple years ago, COCC very graciously allowed me to take a sabbatical. And for my one-term sabbatical project, I decided to make use of my many years being involved in this wonderful program and as Liz and Chantal in the library were thinking about changing our selection process, I wanted to see what other community read programs were doing in terms of selecting their book. And what I found was fascinating. I mean, I started with, of course, Nancy Pearl's program in Seattle, and which was originally called "What If Everyone Would Read the Same Book," which I love that title. They switched to Seattle Reads, but that program, so a few years before ours, and they've kept to that traditional, the library, the key librarian. That hasn't changed. The same is true for Multnomah Library. And when I talked to the Multnomah Library staff member who answered my call, she admitted, she goes, "Oh, we don't do it as well as you guys do it in Deschutes. We have our library member and we have the head of the literary arts program select the book and the author each year. And part of their purpose is to raise money with their community read program. So that makes sense. Funny story though, that New York City tried to be the second city to do the community read program after Seattle in 2001. And they did not succeed because their selection committee, which was a mix of librarians and community members, was unable to select a book. So they just fell apart because they could not come to consensus, which is admittedly a challenge to do, as we've found over the years. So Chicago beat them by being the second city, the second city, to start a community read program. But ironically, they chose The Native Son by Chang-Rae Lee, which takes place in New York City. So I thought that was an amusing story. Other community read programs that have been studied over the years, and there are a handful of researchers doing research in this field, which is wonderful to see. Where there's a program in New Haven and another program in Nova Scotia. Both programs have ended after just 5 to 7 years, where they would have they tried to do a community selection group. And again, the struggle with building consensus, the struggle with meeting times, and they'd go back and forth between a very small library staff group selecting the book to a community book. And ultimately, they did not succeed either. They just couldn't maintain that programming. The American Library Association, until about 2007, kept a wonderful log of all the community read programs in the country. It's unfortunately not kept up to date anymore, but they too recognized that most of the community read programs were using library staff members or directors to choose the book. So once again, the Deschutes Public Library program having this huge community, meeting about 20 people, right, Liz? 20 people on this community advisory group is just amazing. They read so many books and allow us to choose books that the community is invested in. I'm really excited by that. What else did I want to tell you about? There was a program, I think it was an interesting program in New Hanover County, North Carolina, where the selection committee, which was similar to our original selection committee of mostly librarians and professors, would come up with 4 titles, And then they would put those 4 titles on the web and have the community vote for the title of the 4. And the 4 titles consisted of, like us, authors who are able to come to the community. So that's sort of an interesting take. I like that idea, actually, because then the community gets to vote. But I know Liz is like, but unfortunately that program too is no longer active. So again, it's not clear why they're no longer active, but I thought that was an interesting way of selecting a book. And then Canada Reads, I just want to talk about that briefly. There, it was a radio program, and then it became a public television program where the library staff would choose 5 or so books each year, and then celebrities would get to pick one of the books, and they would have public debates, arguing for their book. And the winning book was often based on who argued best, or which celebrity was better at promoting their book, which is another interesting take, and something that I know that we talked about at one point as an advisory committee, because that often is what happened with the smaller advisory committee. Anyway, my conclusion, based on this research I've done, is that the Deschutes Public Library system is by far the most democratic, the most effective, and goodness, the most long-lasting program I've studied. Obviously, Seattle's still going and Multnomah is still going, but in terms of communities of our size, we win. Kudos to Chantal and Liz for continuing this program. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be involved.
Hey, Stacey, when did Multnomah start their program? Do you know what year?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me look at my notes here.
Chantal, do you remember? Was it after us?
You know what? I don't have that. I don't have their original date. After Seattle, but I don't know how long after. Do you know, Chantal?
You're on mute, Chantal.
Sorry. I almost thought it was after us, but I can't be certain. I thought it was like right around the same time that we got rolling.
I think so too. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, because Multnomah actually asked us to send them the books for like the Kite Runner, etc. So they were one of the libraries that we were assisting as well.
Fascinating.
And I am intrigued by the public voting option, but it is, part of the mystique about Novel Idea is that we're bringing forward books that, people haven't possibly read yet, authors that they might not know, and to put 4 books out in advance of the announcement would sort of take that surprise element away. But that would be an interesting idea.
It could be during a year where we can't come to consensus.
Right, true. And there have been some years. So I now would like to have Robert talk about his very unique perspective. He has been a part of a Novel Idea as a reader since that very first year. And then, like I mentioned in my remarks earlier, has joined the selection committee. And so Robert, just talk about your perspective from being a reader and now being part of the decision-making team and what that unique perspective is.
Sure. Thanks, Liz. I have to confess to being a library junkie. Let's just put that out there front. And when the library came up with this Novel Idea in 2004, I mean, you guys had me at the River Y. That was it. I'm in. And I love the concept of the Novel Idea because of this very idea that you just mentioned, which we pick up a book that somebody else has chosen. I would never have picked up. I don't think I would have picked up any of the selections that we've had over the years. So this causes me to pick up that book and to read something that's outside of maybe my comfort level, what I'm used to, the genre I like. And in that way, it's such a great idea. It exposes me to new ideas, new cultures, new locales. And because it's a community-wide read, there's discussion and conversation going on around that. I gotta say, the dream about having everybody in the county reading the same book and engaging in conversation, I mean, that's freaking brilliant. That's all I could say. Um, and really what it is, and I think I've heard Chantal talk about this before, it's really just this little mini experiment in democracy. Wow, I'm going to give up whatever I'm doing with my life or whatever book I might have been reading at the time to read something that that a lot of people in the community are also reading. And wow, that is, you know, reaching out beyond ourselves, our small little world, to a much larger environment. And it's mediated by our own community. So I really love that. I really love that idea. And as has been mentioned, the programming, oh my gosh, library staff, Liz, the people that you work with, they are unbelievable. Year in, year out, we get just the best programming possible. It's so educational, it's informational, stimulates the intellect, takes us to discourses on history, to restaurants, to drinking. I mean, you've got it all wrapped up to art. I mean, it's truly brilliant. So so I think when you package all those things together, you create this really unique program. And I've been so happy to have been part of that as a reader. So then Liz, I don't know, you know, I mean, she must have found me on the curb or something and gone, hey, yeah, do you know how to read? I mean, you know, we're looking for a guy. And it was like, no, are you kidding? This is great. That's not really true. It's a little story. Liz knows I love the novel idea. But going on the selection committee, wow, the whole focus shifts. So now it's not that I'm reading a book that's been sort of selected as a community-wide read. No, I'm part of a group that's trying to determine what that community read is going to be. And it starts off very benignly, I might add. You know, you have 60 titles, you're going through them. Some easily eliminate themselves because they become bestsellers since the time the first person read them, or the theme is like the theme that we had last year. So those kinds of things fall by the wayside. But then as the list starts getting smaller and smaller, the arguments and the advocacy starts getting a little warmer. And so when you get down to the last 10 or 12 novels, which now everybody on the committee is reading, wow, there's some pretty serious investment in that particular book. And so it's a very difficult process because we all love books, and none of us wants to be in a position where we're removing some book that we think is wonderful. You know, the publishing world's gift to Deschutes County. So then we get down to maybe the last 6, and that's where it really gets hopping. So, and some years the debates are much more vigorous than other years. But there's always a fair bit of contention, a lot of give and take. And I think eventually we wind up selecting things for Todd to consider as the novel idea that are really outstanding. And this year is a case in point, because we had, I would say, the last 5 or 6 books left on our list. Each one of those would have made a great novel idea. The other thing that happens in this process of committee, I just want to relate this little story, is that it can cause us to reconsider our own position. And so I had a book that we were reading this last cycle, and I read it and I went, this book is, it's not for us, it's not for me, it's not for the community, set it aside. And then other readers started reading it and going, oh no, this is a great book, this is a good book. And one of those people said, oh wow, I listened to the audio version. And then I thought to myself, wow, you know what? All these people are liking it. What did I not see in the book? And I listened to the audio version, knocked me off my feet. And it quickly jumped to my number 1. Unfortunately, it's not the pick, but that's the way things happen in committee. So anyway, it's a great process that we go through, and it is truly an honor to participate in this selection process. So thank you so much, Liz. And thank you to the rest of you, because I know with Ann and Stacey, we're on the committee on a regular basis, and we always see you, Chantal. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. It's always so fun to reminisce a little bit on the selection process. Some years have definitely been more heated and contentious. Others feel a little smoother and easier, but it's always every year, to your point, Robert, reading books that we wouldn't normally pick up and being able to talk about those books with a really committed team. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. So this project costs money, and that money comes from a variety of sources. And Anne, who's on both our district board and our foundation board, is going to talk about the business side of things that that people might not know. Thanks, Anne.
Well, thanks, everybody. Yeah, this is serious business. This is financial business. And the novel idea, when Chantal brought the idea forward back in the day, she brought it to the foundation, which is an all-volunteer board. And its role is to raise money for projects and for things that are above and beyond what our tax dollars could fund. And this program definitely falls into that category because there are some additional costs for programming, because the programming is so intensive, for bringing the author here. We also often sponsor, we try to get more bang for our buck by having these fantastic authors. So sometimes they'll teach writing classes, or we'll get them into the schools, or they'll do visits to different youth organizations. So, I mean, we've had a good relationship with getting them into COCC classes. So it really reaches out into the community, but that does cost money. So the foundation's job is to raise that money, which it can range from like $25,000 to $40,000 to pull this program off, because it is an all-encompassing program and lasts for about a month. We do that through a collection of sponsorships, and we've been really lucky to have some very dedicated sponsors that have been with us almost from the very beginning of the program, like Ben Research Lonza has been a big supporter of this program. And there's a range of other programs. We've gotten some grants from Oregon Community Foundation and people like that, Oregon Humanities, Deschutes County. So we've had good, successful grant writing programs around it. But a large portion of the money comes from everyday people in the county who love Novel Idea. So we get lots and lots of donations to support this program, which we really appreciate, because people are really invested in this program emotionally. I think it's one of the things that people throughout the community, when you talk about the library, they say, oh, that Novel Idea program, it's the best. And if you have any question about the popularity of the program, all you have to do is be on the foundation board, because people on the foundation board they're serving for free, they're volunteering for their community. The only perk is to get to know what the Novel Idea selection is ahead of time. And people will grill you. It's like, could you give us hints? Could you give us hints? So that just shows, I think, how widespread the love of this program is in the community. And it's really been one of the most fun things that I've been involved with in anything that I've done. And it really sparks that sense of joy in the community, thanks to the creativity of the staff in bringing forward all these amazing programs. I mean, people have talked about it, but it's just, I think that's one reason other libraries copy us so much, is that it isn't just talking about the book, although talking about the book is really important, because the whole purpose of this program is to build community. So we have all these people moving to Deschutes County who haven't lived here, who are trying to establish ties to the community. And this is a really easy, fun entry point to them to get involved and to meet other readers and to talk about ideas. So it's been a great program for that. So I think every penny that we've raised has been well worth the effort. It's been wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. That's a great segue. What I want to do is, well, before I put up the image that I'm going to share, for those of us who have been on the reading selection committee for a while, I'm just wondering if you remember any books. We fondly refer to them as the book that got away, like the book that we wish we'd picked, but for one reason or another, it didn't get picked. Stacey, I have two very memorable ones. H is for Hawk by Helen McDonald.
Yes,
and that was, we ended up not picking that book because she lives in England, and at that time we hadn't yet dipped our toe into international authors yet, and so we didn't pick that book. And then my second book is Last Town on Earth by Thomas Mullen, which is a pandemic book that if you read it right now, it's pretty timely right now. But so those are my two.
That's, Last Town on Earth is the only one I could think of. I think once we choose a book, I'm fully there. I'm 100% committed. So
Chantal,
no, I have my wish we had books list. Yeah.
Chantal, do you have any wish we had? The book that got away? Didn't we look at one by Dave Eggers one year?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yes, we did.
Yeah. Zuton, was it?
Zaitun? Was it
Zaitun. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that one I loved. And I think for popularity, and we had a running streak where we would select a book and then that author would become very famous and the book would get a lot of praise. And so in terms of one that got away that did get a lot of praise was The Tiger's Wife.
Oh, yeah.
That was, I think, one of our biggest battle.
That was a big battle.
Years. Yeah. And that's when we chose instead The Dog Stars. It was between those two, I think, wasn't it?
No, I think that year was Transatlantic and
Transatlantic by Colin McCann. That's right. That's right.
That's the year.
Yes. That was one of my. Yeah, that was.
I was pro Transatlantic. I remember now.
I was too, Stacey. We both were.
You're right.
Don't blame me.
No.
See, Liz was very pro Dog Star, so she won. We did not win that year.
Yeah.
But we still got to bring Colin McCann to Deschutes County. So
right.
Yes.
If you think about it, 18 years of, between 30 and 60 books that get read and considered, that is a ton of material, all thoughtfully explored and considered for the role they might play in building our community. Books are a safe place to come together to talk about things that we disagree about. It provides that buffer to be able to talk about some complicated and sometimes tense topics. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at, so there they all are. Those are the covers of all of our books. And just take a minute to take all that in and remember what it was like to read those books, to attend programs about these books, to hear directly from the author. And I'm just going to go around the room and just share either your favorite book, and if you had a favorite, or if you'd rather talk about a favorite program or a favorite moment. I'm excited to hear you share. So, Stacey, you want to start?
Okay. Well, I have many favorite books. Tale for the Time Being, Euphoria, Homegoing. We had 3 in a row there that I was just in love with. And then World to Come. I remember we had a discussion about it in Chantal's backyard. I do remember that. It was very yummy food and beautiful out there. But it also, reminded me, and maybe it was after the Rules of Civility, we got an email. I would get several emails. I got that year several emails from community members who blamed me for all their New York City books. I think because Capitoil and Rules of Civility were right after the other, maybe. And I'm from New York, so they believed that I somehow convinced the entire committee and library staff to choose New York books. So that's a fond memory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Chantal.
Oh my gosh. I, like Stacey, have a lot of favorites. You know, the Kite Runner and the River Wye are just two that always stay in my heart because they were our two first. But I loved Homegoing, just such a deep, beautiful book, an important book too. But I have to say that it was the program for the help, the author program, that was one of the most special evenings I still think of my life. And I've often said I felt like I was at the Kennedy Center or something, because we had our own homegrown Jason Graham open the evening with a beautiful speech. And then he introduced Merle Evers. And then she was wonderful, and she sang a beautiful hymn. And she also talked about her past history in civil rights. And then she introduced the author, Catherine Stockett. And then Catherine Stockett brought up one of her closest friends, who was the not yet, but soon to be Oscar-winning actress, Octavia Spencer. And the two of them on stage read from the book in character. And it was just an amazing evening that we were in Bend, Oregon, and that all of this rich culture and talent was on our little stage at the Tower Theater. So I think that was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah, definitely. That was a great year. Anne.
I've got to say, well, there are so many of these books that have just blown me away. This is like being in the best book club ever. It really is, because many of these books I would not have picked up. I agree with Chantal about the program for the help. I just felt like that was witnessing history. I mean, it was so moving and profound, and the whole audience, you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, everyone was totally engaged. Kite Runner was the same way. That program was powerful. And we got Khaled Hosseini right at the beginning of his career. And he was wonderful as well. But probably my favorite program was Gonzalez and Daughter Trucking Company. All the programs that year were great, including Trucking 101, where we got to go inside the cab of a long haul truck semi and learn about what it's like to be a long haul truck driver. And then Maria Amparo Escandon was just a really charming, wonderful, funny woman. And the nights that she presented at the Tower Theater, we had a great big red shiny show, chromed up semi-truck parked in front of the tower, and which drew attention from everybody. And the owners of the truck had been really adamant about no one is to touch the truck, no one can get in the truck. And she started charming one of the owners, and she talked to him, and pretty soon she was sitting in the truck. Pretty soon she was blowing the air horn on the truck at 10 o'clock at night in downtown Bend, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. So that's just one of my most fond memories of this program.
Thank you. Robert?
Well, it's just great to listen to Anne tell her story, because I didn't know she had this rabble-rousing side to her, you know? Yeah, some cane in the street. I would say that my favorite book was The Snow Child. I just loved the story, the little sort of magical realism that occurred in that. And the author was, I'm not even sure. I can't even find a word to describe her. But I remember a couple of other things. One is a presentation that Ruth Ozeki did. And when I think of somebody trying to lead however many people Bend High Auditorium holds in meditation. I was like, what? What? Whoa, where does this come from? And the other one is our most recent novel idea, When All Is Said, which we had to do virtually. And I had oh man, I was so worried about that and so disappointed along with the rest of the community, right? Oh, we want the author to come and talk to us. And yet, listening to Anne Griffin, it was like being in her parlor, drinking whiskey with her and having a conversation. Oh my God. It was quite remarkable. And again, kudos, Liz, to you and your staff for pulling that one off. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this was a hard year, but we got through it, and I do think it was a great year. And I just want to get just a reminder of how much work it goes in to pull off every year. We had Wild Ride Brewery out in Redmond made a beer in honor of this year's novel idea. And it's just FYI, I just found this out this week. It's going to become a regular beer that they brew every year. So
Nice.
there was an advertisement there this week. It said, coming soon, backed by popular demand, When All Is Said stout. So I was like, hey,
Yeah.
awesome. So my favorite book was The Dog Stars, as aforementioned. I do love post-apocalyptic dystopian literature, and this one hit all the marks. But when I look at all these book covers, I mean, there was such intention about this every selection. Whether it was the anniversary, we chose Rocket Men because there was a 50th anniversary of the Apollo 8 mission. You know, just real intention and thought behind the selection of these books. But I will say that my favorite programming moment was at Bend High for the final author event for Ya Jesse and Homegoing. We invited a troupe of Ghanaian dancers and drummers to come down to Bend for that event. And they came in through the back of the auditorium, drumming and singing and marching up the aisles to the stage. And everybody stood up and was clapping. It was chilling, spine tingly in a good way. And those are the kind of moments that we look forward to every year during programming for Novel Ideas. That moment that the hair stands up a little bit on the back of your neck, and you're like, that's going to be a memory for us and for people. So just so gorgeous. Okay. So I think that about covers everything, unless we have any last remarks or any last thoughts about, well, I do want to remind people we are busy preparing the Unveiled event, which of course will be done virtually this year. We will not be in person, but we've got a lot of really fun, engaging things planned. There will be trivia. There will be a video from the author, plus an additional surprise opportunity that we're going to be embarking on this year that we're excited about. And that's going to be Saturday, December 5th at 6 p.m. So look forward to that. You can get a link to that event on Saturday, the 5th of December on our website. So that's what's coming up. Any last thoughts from the team here?
Thank you. I'm so excited about this year's pick. You will be too.
I think one of the things that's the part that I really enjoy a lot is that every year as people are walking out of the author presentation, they say, this is the best year ever. And it never fails every year. So I think this year will be the best year ever.
I agree, Anne. And I would just again encourage, similar to what Robert was saying earlier, but it's so important that all of us come together and do that safely and in a neutral space of a book to share ideas and to dive into other people's experiences so we can understand one another better. I think a novel idea is one of the best ways we can do this and come together as a community. So I just hope that people are able to do so this year.
Yeah. Thank you. So we look forward to revealing the 2021 title on December 5th at 6 p.m. virtually. So please join us for that. And as always, we really appreciate your support and your participation in a novel idea. It is what makes it a special thing. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.